Have you ever found yourself trapped with the one person you thought you'd never have a chance with? That's exactly what happened to me, Garrett Sullivan, 54 years old, senior architect at a firm I'd given 22 years of my life, to divorced father of a 12-year-old daughter who barely spoke to me anymore. The woman sitting 3 rows ahead on this company bus had occupied my thoughts for 5 years. Victoria Ashford, department head, heiress to a real estate fortune worth $45 million. The ice queen they called her in whispered conversations around the water cooler. And for 5 years, I'd convinced myself that admiring her from a safe distance was enough. The bus climbed higher into the Colorado Rockies, December cold seeping through the windows, despite the struggling heater. Outside Telluride, the peaks wore fresh snow like wedding veils. Inside, 18 employees from Ashford and Partners, architectural design, tried to pretend this mandatory team-building retreat wasn't cutting into their holiday shopping time. Victoria sat perfectly straight in her seat, dark hair pulled back in a knot that probably cost more to style than my monthly car payment. Charcoal wool coat, cashmere scarf in deep burgundy. Even from behind, she radiated the kind of composure that made grown men nervous in elevator rides. I'd watched her fire a junior partner last spring with the same calm expression she wore ordering coffee. The radio crackled. The driver adjusted the volume and static filled the space between conversations. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration warns of historic blizzard approaching Telluride region. Expected snowfall 18 to 30 inches. Roads may close within hours. Residents advised to. The driver glanced at Victoria in the rearview mirror. His voice carried uncertainty even though he tried to mask it with professional courtesy. Ms. Ashford, should we turn back if the roads close? Her response came without hesitation, cool as the air outside, every syllable precise. We continue as planned. This team needs bonding time. A little snow won't change that. Bonding time. Right. Most of us would rather be home wrapping presents or arguing with family about which relatives to visit for Christmas. But Victoria Ashford didn't ask for opinions. She stated directives and expected compliance. I shifted in my seat, tried to focus on the landscape rolling past, tried not to think about how the light caught the curve of her neck when she turned to look out the window, tried not to remember the way she'd smiled, actually smiled at the summer barbecue when someone's kid asked her about buildings. For maybe 30 seconds, the ice had thawed, and I'd seen something underneath, something warm and achingly human. Then she caught me staring, and the glacier reformed instantly. My phone buzzed. Text from Hayes, my daughter. Mom says you're going on some work trip instead of helping me shop for her Christmas present. Guilt settled in my chest like stones. I typed back quickly. I'll be back Saturday morning. We can shop then. I promise, sweetheart. 3 dots appeared, disappeared. No response came. The same pattern as the last 3 years. Ever since Amanda left, ever since she looked at me over the breakfast table and said the words that still echoed in quiet moments. You love your work more than you love us, and I'm done competing with blueprints for your attention. She'd been right. I'd missed Hayes's dance recital, soccer games, the spring concert where she played violin for the first time. Always a deadline, always a client meeting, always something more urgent than watching my daughter grow up. By the time I realized what I'd sacrificed, Amanda had already filed papers, and Hayes had learned to stop expecting me to show up. Now Hayes lived with her mother in Boulder, and I got her every other weekend and alternating holidays. Sometimes she talked to me. Sometimes she responded in monosyllables and spent the whole visit texting friends. I couldn't blame her. I'd taught her that I wasn't reliable, that my promises came with asterisks and fine print. The bus jolted over a pothole. Conversations around me continued, office gossip, speculation about year-end bonuses, complaints about the weather. Timothy Bradford sat 2 rows up MIT ring, catching the light as he gestured while talking. 39 years old, 15 years of experience, 3 major luxury developments under his belt. My main competition for the Riverside project. Victoria would announce her choice this weekend, $200 million luxury development along the Boulder Creek corridor. Residential towers, commercial space, public parks. The kind of project that could define a career. The kind I needed to prove to myself and maybe to Hayes that all those missed moments had counted for something. Timothy caught my eye and nodded. Friendly enough on the surface, but I'd been in this business long enough to recognize ambition when it wore a smile. The bus turned onto a private road. Mountain Ridge Resort sprawled across the landscape like something from a luxury magazine. Main lodge built from local timber and stone floor-to-ceiling windows, reflecting the slate-gray sky. 9 cabins scattered across the property, each one secluded enough for privacy, close enough to hike back to the lodge if needed. Victoria stood as the bus rolled to a stop. She didn't need to raise her voice. Conversations died the moment she turned to face us. Welcome to Mountain Ridge. The next 3 days are about building trust as a team. You'll notice cabins instead of hotel rooms. You'll be paired randomly. No phones, no laptops, no distractions. Just a chance to know your colleagues as human beings instead of names and email signatures. Someone in the back, Marcus from accounting, muttered something about forced fun. Victoria's gaze found him instantly. Mr. Chen, if you'd prefer to return to Denver, the next bus leaves in 20 minutes. Otherwise, I expect full participation. Marcus shook his head quickly. Nobody challenged Victoria twice. She produced a small bag from her coat pocket, folded papers inside. Cabin assignments. Draw a number, find your partner, collect your keys from the front desk. Dinner at the lodge at 7. Don't be late. The bag made its way down the aisle. I watched people draw numbers, some pleased with their pairings, others hiding disappointment. Timothy Drew first checked his paper, grin. Probably got paired with Jennifer from design, who laughed at all his jokes and brought him coffee. The bag reached me. I pulled out a folded square, opened it. Cabin 9. Victoria's voice cut through the murmur of conversations. She held up her own paper, her expression unchanged. Cabin 9. Who drew that number? My hand went up before my brain could process the implications. Her eyes met mine for maybe 2 seconds, not long enough to read anything, too long to be completely neutral. Mr. Sullivan, it looks like we're bunkmates. Laughter rippled through the bus, good-natured ribbing. Someone called out that I'd better not snore. Someone else made a joke about employee reviews and sleeping arrangements. Victoria's expression didn't shift a millimeter. The stones in my chest turned to ice. 3 days, sharing a cabin, with the woman who'd haunted my thoughts for 5 years. The woman who could fire me with a signature. The woman who represented everything I'd never be good enough to have. We filed off the bus. Cold hit like a slap after the stale warmth inside. The main lodge waited, smoke curling from 3 chimneys, windows glowing amber in the gathering dusk. Inside smelled like pine and money. Leather furniture, woven rugs that probably cost more than my monthly salary, a fireplace large enough to stand in. The resort manager, a trim woman in her 50s with silver hair and worry lines, greeted Victoria with a handshake. Ms. Ashford, welcome back, though I have to say the weather report has me concerned. Victoria shrugged off her coat, underneath a cream sweater that probably cost what I made in a week. We've weathered storms before, Margaret. Margaret's worry lines deepen. Not like this one. They're calling it historic. If the roads close, then we'll enjoy the isolation. That's rather the point, isn't it? Margaret handed over keys, 2 sets for each cabin. Her fingers trembled slightly as she passed mine over. Cabin 9 is the furthest out. Beautiful view, very private. But if the weather turns bad, it might be difficult to get back to the lodge. There's a radio for emergencies, firewood in the shed, supplies in the kitchen. Cell service can be spotty up there. Victoria took her keys without hesitation. I'm sure we'll manage. Mr. Sullivan, shall we? A resort SUV waited outside to ferry us and our bags up the winding road. Victoria sat in front with the driver. I took the back, watched the lodge shrink in the side mirror. The road climbed twisted through stands of aspen and pine. Snow had started falling, fat flakes that melted on the windshield before the wipers could clear them. 15 minutes up into the mountains, the driver pulled into a small clearing. Cabin 9 sat nestled among the trees, weathered wood and stone smoke, gray roof windows, dark. Smaller than I'd expected, more isolated than I'd imagined. The driver helped unload our bags. Dinner's at 7, like Ms. Ashford said. Follow the trail markers back down if you're walking. Takes about 20 minutes. Radio's on the kitchen counter if you need anything. Then he was gone, taillights disappearing down the road, leaving us standing in the snow. Victoria picked up her leather weekender bag like it weighed nothing. She moved toward the cabin door, efficient as always, while I grabbed my duffel and followed. The interior surprised me. 2 bedrooms flanking a central living space. Stone fireplace, comfortable furniture that looked lived in rather than staged. Kitchen area with worn counters and a vintage stove. Windows facing west toward the mountains where clouds were building into something that looked biblical. Victoria walked through the space assessing. She pushed open the door to the smaller bedroom. You should take the master. You're taller, you'll need the space. The consideration caught me off guard. I'd expected her to claim the better room without discussion. Are you sure I don't mind? I'm 5'6", Mr. Sullivan. I'll fit fine in the smaller room. It's practical, not generous. But the way she said it, something in her tone suggested she wasn't quite as cold as the words implied. I carried my bag into the master bedroom. Queen bed, simple furniture, small bathroom attached. Through the window I could see snow accumulating on the branches. Already the wind had picked up, making the pines sway. When I returned to the main room, Victoria had shed her sweater for something more casual, a soft gray Henley that made her look younger somehow. Less like a department head, more like a woman spending the weekend in the mountains. She'd released her hair from that severe knot. It fell past her shoulders, darker than I'd realized, shot through with strands of silver she didn't bother hiding. She caught me looking, and something flickered in her expression. Not quite annoyance, not quite amusement. We have 3 hours before dinner. I'm going to check supplies inventory what we have. You're welcome to explore or rest or whatever you need. Translation. She wanted space. I could take a hint. I grabbed my coat. I'll check the firewood situation. Supposed to get cold tonight. Outside the shed stood 50 feet behind the cabin door, hanging slightly crooked on its hinges. Inside, stacked cordwood reached the ceiling, enough to last a week if needed. I loaded an armful and carried it back, made 3 trips until the cabin had plenty. By the time I finished, the snow was falling harder. Not quite a blizzard yet, but heading that direction. Temperature had dropped noticeably. The wind carried a bite that went straight through my jacket. Victoria stood at the kitchen counter when I came in, stamping snow off my boots. She'd lined up our supplies, canned goods, pasta sauce, coffee, tea, protein bars, trail mix. Not luxurious, but sufficient. We could survive a week if we had to. Her tone suggested she was filing that information away, preparing for contingencies. Always thinking 3 moves ahead. I stacked wood by the fireplace, got kindling arranged. Radio said 18 to 30 inches. Storm should clear by Sunday. Should. She repeated the word like it meant nothing. Like weather reports were suggestions rather than predictions. I struck a match, touched it to the kindling. Flames caught spread, began eating the smaller pieces. Warmth pushed out into the room, driving back the chill. Victoria moved to the window, arms crossed, watching the snow. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The fire crackled. Wind rattled the windows. Somewhere in the forest, a branch snapped under the weight of accumulating snow. My father used to bring me up here. Her voice came quiet, almost too low to hear. Before he remarried, before everything fell apart, we'd spend weekends in cabins like this. He'd point out constellations, teach me about the stars. She stopped, as if surprised she'd said anything at all. I wanted to ask what happened, why everything fell apart, why her voice carried that particular shade of loss. But asking felt like crossing a line, stepping into territory I had no right to enter. Hayes, my daughter used to love camping. Before the divorce. The words came out before I could stop them. We'd go to Rocky Mountain National Park. She'd collect rocks, make up stories about where they came from. Now she barely speaks to me except to point out everything I've done wrong. Victoria turned from the window. Her eyes found mine and held them. Children remember what we teach them to expect from us. If we teach them disappointment. She let the sentence hang unfinished. It shouldn't have stung. It was true. But hearing it spoken aloud, especially by her, felt like pressing on a bruise. I'm trying to do better. Be better. It's just hard to rebuild trust once it's broken. She finished the thought for me. Yes, I know. Something in the way she said it suggested she wasn't talking about children anymore. The radio on the counter crackled. Static, then a voice cutting through. All roads to Telluride now closed. Highway 145 impassable. Mountain Ridge Resort advising all guests to shelter in place. Do not attempt to drive. Repeat, all roads closed. The signal dissolved into static again. Victoria walked to the radio, adjusted the dial, found nothing but white noise and fragments of emergency broadcasts. Well, Her voice stayed level. I suppose we're committed now. I checked my phone. One bar of signal, flickering. Tried to call Hayes. The call dropped before it connected. Tried again. Same result. Victoria held up her own phone. No service. We're effectively cut off until the storm passes. She should have looked worried. Instead, she looked almost relieved, like isolation was a gift rather than a problem. The afternoon bled into evening. We moved around each other, carefully maintaining distance in the small space. Victoria read a book she'd brought. I sketched preliminary ideas for the Riverside project, trying not to let my pencil betray how aware I was of her presence. Around 5, she stood and stretched. I should make something resembling dinner. Do you have preferences? I can cook. Really. I've been doing it for 3 years. That almost smile played at the corners of her mouth. Single dad skills. You learn fast when the alternative is burning spaghetti for the 3rd night in a row. This time the smile reached her eyes. Just for a second, but enough to make my chest tight. We cooked together in the small kitchen. Nothing fancy pasta with canned sauce, garlic bread from frozen. But moving around each other, handing off utensils, working toward a shared goal felt comfortable in a way I hadn't expected. Like we'd done this before in another life. Dinner at the small table. Wind howled outside, snow piling against the windows. The cabin felt smaller as darkness fell, the world contracting to firelight and shadows. Victoria ate slowly, methodically, not enjoying exactly, but not merely refueling either. She looked at her plate like she was solving an equation. When I took over the department, half the partners thought I'd gotten the position because of my last name. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. My grandfather founded the firm 60 years ago, built it from nothing. My father nearly destroyed it through bad investments and worse judgment. I spent 10 years rebuilding what he'd broken, and they still whisper that I'm only here because of family connections. I set down my own fork. Your Riverside proposal is brilliant. Anyone with eyes can see that. The sustainable materials, the public spaces, the way you've integrated green technology without sacrificing aesthetics. That's not family connections. That's vision. She looked up, met my gaze straight on. You've read the proposal. 3 times. It's the kind of project that changes how people think about urban development. Something shifted in her expression. Surprise, maybe, or something more complicated. Most people don't look past the dollar amount. 200 million sounds impressive. They don't see the work underneath. Then most people are idiots. The laugh that escaped her sounded rusty, like it hadn't been used in a while. Careful, Mr. Sullivan. Some of those idiots sign your paychecks. Some of them need to hear the truth more than they need their egos stroked. She shook her head, but the smile lingered. You know what I appreciate about your designs? You don't try to make buildings that scream for attention. You make spaces where people want to live. There's a difference. Heat climbed at my neck. Praise from Victoria Ashford wasn't something that happened. Not to me. Not to anyone, really. I learned it from good teachers and from watching what doesn't work. Who taught you? My father. He was a carpenter. Not an architect, just a guy who built houses. But he understood materials, understood how spaces feel. He'd take me to job sites when I was Hayes's age, let me watch. He'd say, I paused, surprised the memory still had edges sharp enough to cut. He'd say that the best buildings make people forget they're in a building at all. They just feel right. Victoria nodded slowly. Your father sounds wise. He was. Died when I was 19. Heart attack on a job site. I was in my 2nd year of community college studying architecture because I couldn't afford anything else. After he died, I thought about quitting, getting a job, any job. But his foreman told me my dad used to brag about his son who was going to design buildings instead of just building them. So I kept going. Transferred to University of Colorado Boulder, worked 3 jobs to pay for it. Took me 7 years to finish a 4-year degree, but I did it. I stopped to realize I'd said more in 10 minutes than I'd said to her in 5 years. Something about the isolation, the firelight, the way she listened without judgment, it loosened the words I normally kept locked away. You're right. She picked up her fork again, but didn't eat. Good teachers matter. My grandfather taught me that architecture is about legacy, not personal legacy, although he certainly built that, but the legacy we leave for communities. The spaces we create shape how people live for generations. That's responsibility. That's weight. And if you're not carrying that weight, you're not really designing. You're just drawing pretty pictures. Outside, the wind screamed. The cabin shuddered but held. Snow piled higher against the windows, blocking out what little light the moon might have provided. I started clearing dishes. Victoria moved to help. Our hands brushed, reaching for the same plate. She pulled back like she'd touched fire. Sorry. No, sorry. We finished cleaning in silence that felt louder than conversation. By 8 o'clock, the temperature in the cabin had dropped despite the fire. I added more wood, stacked it carefully to maximize heat. Victoria wrapped herself in a thick blanket, curled into the corner of the sofa. I hate cold. Her voice came small, almost vulnerable. Always have. When my father worked late, which was always, I'd be alone in that huge house. 14 rooms, and I'd huddle in one, trying to stay warm. The housekeepers went home at 6, so it was just me and all that empty space. The image hit me wrong at a child alone in a mansion, surrounded by wealth, but starving for warmth. What about friends, sleepovers? She laughed, but it sounded hollow. Friends were complicated. Everyone wanted to be my friend because of the money, or they resented me for having it. I learned early that isolation was safer than friendship. That's not living, that's just existing. Her eyes found mine across the room. Sometimes existing is all you can manage. I wanted to argue, wanted to tell her that she deserved more than isolation and cold rooms, improving herself to people who would never see past her last name. But what right did I have? I'd isolated myself too, not in mansions, but in work. Choosing projects over people until the people I loved gave up waiting. The fire popped. Sparks danced up the chimney. The wind drove snow against the windows with a sound like thrown sand. Mr. Sullivan. Garrett, please. Mr. Sullivan makes me feel like we're in a performance review. The corner of her mouth lifted. Garrett, then, and you can call me Victoria, at least when we're trapped in snowstorms together. Deal. She pulled the blanket tighter. I'm going to attempt sleep. Morning will come whether we're ready or not. She stood, hesitated. Thank you. For dinner. For conversation. For not, she stopped, certain again. For treating me like a person instead of a balance sheet. Before I could respond, she disappeared into her bedroom door, clicking shut softly. I sat by the fire for another hour, watching flames consume wood, turning substance into heat and ash. Thinking about Victoria alone in a 14-room house. About Hayes growing up thinking her father cared more about blueprints than her piano recitals. About all the ways we fail the people who need us most. Eventually, I retreated to my own room, climbed into bed, still wearing most of my clothes. The cold had teeth now, biting through blankets and walls. I could hear the wind relentless, battering the cabin like it wanted inside. Sleep came in fits. I'd drift off, then jerk awake to the sound of something crashing outside. A branch breaking, ice sliding off the roof, the whole cabin groaning under the assault. At some point past midnight, I gave up. Pulled on my coat, padded back to the living room. The fire had died to embers. I built it back up, stood close to pull warmth into my bones. Behind me, a door opened. Victoria emerged, wrapped in her blanket like a cloak, hair loose around her shoulders, face pale in the firelight. Can't sleep either. Too cold. The bedroom doesn't have heat. I know, mine either. We stood on opposite sides of the fire. The space between us felt charged somehow, like static electricity before a storm. This is ridiculous, she said it matter of fact. We're both freezing. We're both adults. The smart thing would be to share body heat. My heart kicked against my ribs. Victoria, I don't think... Not like that. She cut me off, but her cheeks had color now. Just pragmatically. We pull the couch cushions to the floor near the fire. We share blankets. We survive the night, nothing more. She was right. It was practical, logical, the smart choice. So why did my mouth go dry at the thought? We made a makeshift bed on the floor, 2 couch cushions, every blanket we could find, pillows from both bedrooms. The fire roared, heat pushed back against the cold. We lay down side by side, careful to maintain distance. 2 feet of space between us, both staring at the ceiling. The silence stretched. Wind howled. Fire crackled. Why did your marriage really end? Her question came quiet, like she expected me to deflect. I could have. Should have, probably. But something about the darkness, the isolation, the way she'd shared her own loneliness, it pulled honesty from me. I chose work over family. Amanda gave me chances, so many chances, but I kept choosing wrong. There was always another deadline, other client, another meeting that couldn't wait. I told myself I was building a future for us, but I was really just building an excuse to avoid being present. When Hayes was 5, she had a dance recital. I promised I'd be there. I promised. But a client called with changes to a design, and I took the call and I missed it. Hayes cried for 2 hours, Amanda told me later. My 5-year-old daughter crying because her father broke his promise. Again. The words tasted like ash. Amanda filed for divorce when Hayes was 9. Said she was done competing with blueprints for my attention. Said Hayes deserved a father who showed up. She was right. About all of it. I've spent 3 years trying to rebuild what I destroyed, and Hayes still looks at me like she's waiting for me to disappoint her, because that's what I taught her to expect. Silence. Then Victoria's voice barely above a whisper. At least you're trying. Some fathers never bother. I turned my head to look at her profile in the firelight. Your father. She nodded, still staring up. He resented me from the moment my grandfather's will was read. Everything went to me, the company, the property, the investments. $45 million to a 25-year-old. My father got nothing except a generous salary as long as he worked for the firm. Grandfather didn't trust him. With good reason, as it turned out. My father spent the next 5 years trying to undermine me, convince the board I was unfit. When that failed, he left. Moved to Arizona with wife number 3. We haven't spoken in 5 years. I'm sorry. She turned her head, met my eyes. Don't be. I learned something valuable. I learned that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. That trust has to be earned. That love, real love, is choice, not obligation. The way she said love, like she was testing the weight of the word, made something ache in my chest. Is that why you never married? Because trust is too hard. I was engaged once. Her voice went even quieter. 10 years ago, Dominic Rothschild, old money, good connections, everything my grandfather would have wanted for me. We were planning a June wedding. Big affair, 300 guests, all the right people. She stopped. I waited. 3 days before the wedding, I went to his apartment to drop off some paperwork. Found him with my executive assistant, in bed, laughing about how easy it had been to convince me he loved me. How after the wedding he'd have access to my trust fund, my inheritance, everything. They didn't even notice me standing in the doorway at first. Anger flashed hot and quick in my chest. What did you do? Called off the wedding, fired the assistant, told Dominic that if he ever contacted me again, I'd make sure every firm in the city knew exactly what kind of man he was. Then I went home and cried for 3 days. After that, I built walls, high ones, thick ones, because the alternative was letting people close enough to destroy me again. She rolled onto her side, facing me now. So, yes, Garrett, trust is too hard. Or it was. Until... She stopped herself, bit her lip. Until what? Until tonight. Until I sat across from you at dinner and realized I've been watching you for 3 years. Not as a supervisor watching an employee, as a woman watching a man who makes buildings that feel like home, who talks about his daughter with guilt and love tangled together, who quotes his carpenter father and doesn't try to impress anyone with credentials or connections, she exhaled slowly, who just seems real. In a world where everyone's performing all the time, you seem real. My breath caught. Victoria, I'm just a guy who failed at marriage and disappoints his kid and can't quite figure out how to be better. You're a man who keeps trying. That's not nothing. That's everything. The space between us had shrunk. I didn't remember moving closer, but now I could see gold flecks in her eyes, could count the fine lines at the corners that spoke of years holding everything together alone. I need to tell you something. Her voice wavered. And it's probably inappropriate and definitely unprofessional, and I should probably keep it to myself, but I'm so tired of keeping things to myself. Tell me. For 3 years, I've been assigning myself as lead reviewer on all your projects. Not because you need oversight, Not because your work isn't excellent, but because reviewing your designs gave me an excuse to spend time thinking about you, to study how your mind works, to pretend just for a few hours that we were collaborating instead of me judging you. The confession hit like a physical blow. You what? I know, it's pathetic, the Ice Queen nursing a crush like some teenager. But every time you submitted a proposal, I'd clear my schedule, pour coffee, sit with your designs for hours, not critiquing, just appreciating. The way you think about space, about light, about how people move through buildings. She stopped, looked away. You're the only person whose work still makes me feel something. My hand moved before my brain engaged. I reached across the small, spaced fingers, finding hers. Victoria, she looked back. Tears caught the firelight. For 5 years, I've told myself admiring you from a distance was enough. That watching you in meetings, listening to you critique projects, catching glimpses of the person underneath all that ice, that would be sufficient. I've built entire fantasies around 30-second conversations by the coffee machine. Memorize the way you tap your pen when you're thinking. Notice that you only wear your hair down when you've been working too hard and forget to put it up. I've been in love with the idea of you for so long, I forgot it was just an idea until tonight. Her fingers tightened around mine. What changed tonight? You became real. Not my boss, not the Ice Queen, not some untouchable thing I could safely worship from far away. You became Victoria, who hates cold and spent childhood alone in a mansion and got betrayed by someone who should have loved you and built walls so high no one could hurt you again. You became someone I could actually love instead of just fantasize about. Silence. Just our breathing and the fire and the storm. Then she moved, closed the distance between us. Her hand came up to touch my face, fingers cold against my skin. We shouldn't. There are policies. I'm your superior. This could cost us. I covered her hand with mine. I know, and tomorrow in daylight we can be smart and professional and pretend this didn't happen. But right now, in this moment, I don't care about policies or careers or what happens when the storm ends. Right now, all I care about is that you're real and you're here and you're looking at me like maybe I'm not crazy for feeling this way. You're not crazy. She whispered it like a confession. I'm falling for you, Garrett. Have been for 3 years. And I hate it because it's terrifying and inappropriate and everything I swore I'd never risk again. But I can't. I don't want to. I kissed her. Or she kissed me. Or we met somewhere in the middle, the question of who moved first dissolving into the fact of contact. Her lips were cold at first, then warm. The kiss stayed gentle, tentative. Not passion, but something deeper, recognition maybe. Like two people finally admitting what they'd known all along. We pulled apart. Her eyes searched mine. We can't go further. Not here, not now, not until we figure out. I know, this is enough. This is more than I thought I'd ever have. She settled into my arms, head against my chest. I pulled blankets over us both. The fire warmed one side, she warmed the other. The storm raged outside, but inside felt safe. Tell me something true. She whispered it against my shoulder. About what? Anything, everything. Just talk to me. I've spent so many nights alone in silence. I want to hear your voice. So I talked. Told her about growing up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Aurora, about my father teaching me to measure twice and cut once, about my mother who died of cancer when I was 12, leaving my father to raise me alone, about meeting Amanda in college, thinking I'd found forever, slowly learning that forever requires more than good intentions. She talked too, about her mother dying when she was 8, about her grandfather who taught her that women had to work 3 times as hard to be taken half as seriously, about taking over the firm at 25 and spending 10 years proving she deserved it, about walking past happy families and restaurants and wondering what she'd traded away to build her career. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, I felt her breathing even out. Sleep had finally claimed her. I stayed awake longer, watching firelight play across her face, trying to memorize this moment before reality reclaimed it. Morning light filtered through the windows, weak and gray. I woke to the realization that we'd moved during sleep. Victoria's body fitted against mine, my arm draped over her waist, her hand covering mine where it rested at her ribs. intimate in a way that had nothing to do with sex and everything to do with vulnerability. I stayed still, not wanting to wake her, not wanting this moment to end. Her eyes opened. For 3 heartbeats, she looked confused. Then memory caught up. I watched emotions flicker across her face, embarrassment, uncertainty, something that might have been joy. Good morning. I kept my voice low. Good morning. She didn't pull away. This is complicated, I know. I don't do complicated, Garrett. I do clearly defined parameters and professional boundaries, and yet here we are. She exhaled, slowly turned in my arms to face me. Here we are. A pause. I should check the radio, see if the roads are clear. Probably. Neither of us moved. This can't happen at the office. You understand that, right? The moment we're back in Denver, I'm your supervisor again. Nothing can change. The board would... I understand, we'll figure it out later. But right now, can we have this morning before everything gets complicated again? She nodded. Rose carefully wrapped herself in a blanket, moved to the kitchen and switched on the radio. Static. Then a voice crackling through. Storm intensifying, all roads remain closed. Mountain Ridge Resort reporting all guests safe and sheltered. Additional snowfall expected through Friday night. Rescue operations postponed until Saturday at earliest. She turned the volume down. We're stuck at least another day, maybe 2. She should have looked worried, frustrated. Instead, something like relief crossed her face. I should make coffee. She moved toward the kitchen blanket trailing behind her. Unless you want to handle that, I've got it. You built the fire last night. Fair's fair. I got the coffee started instant from supplies, nothing fancy. Found a pan and made scrambled eggs from powdered mix. Toast from bread that was starting to go stale. Not impressive, but hot and edible. We ate in comfortable silence. The awkwardness from waking up together had faded, replaced by something easier. Domestic almost. What's the first thing you'll do when we get back to civilization? She asked it while spreading jam on toast. Call Hayes. Make sure she knows I'm okay. She worries even if she pretends she doesn't. Victoria's expression softened. She's lucky to have a father who thinks about her first. I haven't always. That's the problem. But you do now. That counts for something. I wanted to ask what she'd do first, who she'd call, if anyone worried about her when she went silent for days. But the question felt too invasive, too much like highlighting the loneliness she'd confessed last night. After breakfast, we cleaned up, moved around each other, easily passing dishes, working in tandem. The storm outside showed no signs of letting up. Snow had buried the windows nearly halfway. The world had contracted to this cabin, this space, this strange pocket of time. I have cards. Victoria produced a worn deck from her bag. My grandfather taught me poker when I was 10. Said a woman in business needed to know when to hold and when to fold. We played for hours, nothing at stake except pride. She won more hands than she lost, but I held my own. Between deals we talked about architecture, about books we'd read, about places we'd traveled or wanted to visit. The conversation flowed easy, no forced small talk, just 2 people discovering they had more in common than job titles suggested. Around 2 in the afternoon, Victoria set down her cards. I want to show you something. She disappeared into her bedroom, returned with a worn leather portfolio. She hesitated, then sat beside me on the couch. Opened the portfolio carefully. Inside were sketches, dozens of them. Residential designs mostly. Small houses with clean lines and clever use of space. Cabins that seemed to grow from their landscapes. Beach houses with walls of glass. Mountain retreats built from local stone. These are incredible. I turned pages, slowly studying each drawing. Why aren't you designing anymore? Department heads manage. They don't create. Says who? The board, my father before he left. Every partner who thinks my job is to review budgets and keep projects on schedule. I tapped one sketch, a mountain cabin, not unlike this one, but with soaring windows and a deck that cantilevered over a valley. This is brilliant. The way you've positioned it to capture morning light, the overhangs for summer shade, the circulation between public and private spaces. Have you ever tried to build it? She shook her head. It's just a dream. An indulgence. Not practical for the kind of work we do. That's bullshit. She blinked startled. The saddest thing isn't failing at your dream. I chose words carefully. It's giving up your dream because someone else decided it wasn't practical or profitable or serious enough. You have talent, Victoria, real talent, and you're burying it because some board members think creativity isn't part of your job description. Her eyes went bright. Not quite tears, but close. I spent 20 years proving I was smart enough, tough enough, dedicated enough. By the time I'd proven it, I'd forgotten why I wanted to in the first place. I don't know how to be both the department head they respect and the designer I wanted to be. Then build a life where you can be both. Start your own firm. Do projects that matter to you. Use that 45 million to fund your own vision instead of funding someone else's. She laughed, but it sounded broken. Just walk away from everything I've built, from the legacy my grandfather left me. Your grandfather left you money and a company. He didn't leave you a prison sentence. What would he want for you to spend the next 20 years managing budgets, or for you to design buildings that make people stop and stare? She closed the portfolio, fingers trembling slightly. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. It's terrifying, yes. Risky, absolutely. But simple. You either choose to live the life you want, or you choose to live the life other people expect from you. And what life do you want, Garrett? If it were that simple, what would you choose? The question turned the mirror back on me. I could deflect, play it safe, or I could be as honest as I was asking her to be. I'd choose a life where Hayes doesn't look at me with disappointment, where I show up for the moments that matter instead of always having an excuse, where work supports life instead of consuming it. And I stopped, reconsidered, then pushed forward. And I'd choose a life where loving you wasn't something I had to hide or apologize for or sacrifice my career to have. She set the portfolio aside, moved closer, her hand found mine. We can't have that life, not while I'm your superior. The policies are clear. The board would then change what makes it impossible. Request transfer, resign. Start that firm you should have started 10 years ago. There are ways, Victoria, if you want them badly enough. And if I'm not brave enough, if I've spent so long being safe that I don't know how to take risks anymore. I lifted our joined hands, pressed my lips to her knuckles. Then I'll wait, however long it takes. But I'm done pretending I don't feel this. Done convincing myself that admiring you from a distance is enough. I'm 54 years old. I've wasted too much time on safe choices and careful distance. So here's my truth. I love you. Not the idea of you, not the fantasy. You, the woman who hates cold and hides sketchbooks in her luggage and carries her grandfather's lessons like armor. I love you, and if that costs me my job, if it costs me everything, at least it'll be because I finally chose something real. Tears spilled over, tracking down her cheeks. You can't say things like that. It's not fair. Nothing about this is fair, but it's true, and I'm tired of hiding the true things behind professional courtesy. She kissed me then, not tentative like last night, but urgent, desperate, like she'd been drowning and I was air. We pulled apart, both breathing hard. I'm terrified. She whispered it against my mouth. Me too. But I don't want to stop. Then don't. We spent the afternoon tangled together on the couch, kissing, talking, learning the geography of each other's bodies in ways that stayed clothed and careful. This wasn't about sex, though God knew the want was there, sharp and insistent. This was about discovering that the person you'd built fantasies around was better than the fantasy. That real skin and breath and heartbeat mattered more than imagined perfection. Evening came. We made dinner together, more pasta, more canned sauce, but it tasted like celebration somehow. Like we'd crossed some threshold and couldn't go back even if we wanted to. After dinner, we carried our makeshift bed to the master bedroom. The fire we'd built sent warmth through the cabin. We climbed under blankets together, no pretense of separation now. Victoria settled against my chest. Tell me what happens next, when the storm ends, when we go back. I ran fingers through her hair, felt her breathe. I don't know, we figure it out, one day at a time. That's not a plan, that's hope. Sometimes hope is all you get. She tilted her head to look at me. I've never been good at hope. I'm good at strategy, at 5-year plans, at risk assessment, and contingency management. But hope, she shook her head. Hope feels dangerous. Love is dangerous. Hope is just acknowledging that danger might be worth it. She traced patterns on my chest, fingers moving absently. Dominic destroyed my ability to trust. For 10 years, I've kept everyone at arm's length because letting people close meant giving them power to hurt me. And now her voice caught. You're asking me to hand you that power and just trust that you won't use it. I'm asking you to take a risk. Not blind trust, not perfect certainty, just willingness to try on. And if it doesn't work, if we get back to Denver and reality intrudes in this, she gestured between us, this beautiful, impossible thing we've built in a snowstorm, what if it can't survive real life? Then we'll have had this. 3 days of being honest, of choosing each other over fear. That's more than most people get. She was quiet for a long time. I thought maybe she'd fallen asleep. Then her voice came small and determined. I'm going to resign from the department head position, effective February 1st. That gives the board time to find my replacement. Time for me to transition my projects. She took a breath, time to start my own firm. Focus on design, on the work I actually love instead of the work I'm supposed to do. My heart kicked. You're serious? Terrified, but yes, because you're right. I've spent 20 years proving myself to people who will never be satisfied. And I'm tired. I want to design buildings that matter to me. I want to take risks. And she met my eyes. I want to see if this thing between us can be more than a beautiful moment in a snowstorm. I kissed her, poured every ounce of hope and terror and desperate wanting into it. Victoria, don't make promises. Not yet. Let's just be here. Right now, and tomorrow we'll start figuring out the rest. So we did. Stayed in that space between what was and what might be. Talked until our voices went rough. Kissed until our lips were tender. Held each other while the storm raged and the world outside disappeared, and the only reality that mattered was the one we were building together. Somewhere past midnight, I heard her breathing even out. She'd fallen asleep, head on my shoulder, arm across my chest, trusting me to keep her warm through the night. I stayed awake longer, thinking about the life I'd built, careful, controlled, designed to protect me from more failure. And the life I was choosing, uncertain, risky, requiring faith in something I couldn't control or plan for. For the first time in 3 years, maybe in my entire adult life, I was choosing love over safety, connection over control, the terrifying possibility of happiness over the comfortable certainty of loneliness. Hayes would be proud, I thought, or confused, maybe both. Amanda would probably say it was about time I learned to choose someone over my career. And Victoria, this complicated, brilliant, damaged woman currently sleeping in my arms, Victoria had chosen hope over fear, had trusted me with the vulnerability she'd spent a decade protecting. Whatever happened next, we'd face it together. The storm could rage all it wanted. We'd already found shelter. Morning came gray and cold. I woke to Victoria propped on one elbow watching me. The radio? Her voice carried tension. The storm's breaking. Roads should clear by afternoon. Rescue teams are coming. Reality arriving right on schedule. I pulled her close, felt her heart racing against mine. We knew this was coming. Knowing doesn't make it easier. No, but it doesn't make what we decided any less true. She nodded, but uncertainty clouded her eyes. When we get back, when we're surrounded by colleagues and expectations and all the reasons this is complicated, I'll remember this, you, the way you look right now, and I'll wait for you to be ready to make it real outside these walls. I'm not good at waiting. Then don't make me wait long. She kissed me, soft and sweet and tasting like goodbye. The helicopter came at noon. We packed silently, erasing evidence of what had happened here. The makeshift bed disappeared back into couch cushions. The sketchbook returned to her bag. The man who'd fallen in love and the woman who'd chosen hope retreated behind professional masks. At the door, she paused. Garrett. Yeah. Thank you for seeing me, not the Ice Queen or the department head, or the trust fund. Just me. Thank you for letting me. The helicopter ride took 20 minutes. Victoria sat across from me, maintaining careful distance. Professional, appropriate, like the last 3 days hadn't happened. But when the pilot turned to adjust instruments, her foot brushed mine. Deliberate, brief, a reminder that underneath the masks, we were still real. At the lodge, our colleagues greeted us with relief and curiosity. Questions about the storm, the isolation, how we'd managed. Fine. Victoria's voice carried that familiar chill. Mr. Sullivan and I are both professionals. We managed perfectly well. Timothy Bradford stood near the fire, watching us with eyes too sharp. I saw him notice the way Victoria's gaze lingered on me for half a second too long. Saw him file that information away. Later, as the bus wound down from the mountains, Timothy leaned across the aisle. Quite the adventure, huh? Being stuck with I'll start with the boss. I kept my voice neutral. Could have been worse. Right. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Could have been worse. He knew, maybe not details, but enough. And just like that, the complications began. December 18th marked my return to the ordinary world. The office occupied 3 floors of a glass tower in downtown Denver, all clean lines and expensive furniture chosen to impress clients. I'd walked these halls for 5 years, but now everything felt different. The conference room where Victoria had once praised my work on the Morrison project. The elevator where we'd stood in silence dozens of times, both pretending we weren't hyper-aware of breathing the same air. The coffee station where I'd memorized how she took her coffee, black, no sugar, always in the same blue mug. My desk hadn't changed. Projects waited in neat stacks, emails demanded responses, voicemails blinked accusingly. The world had continued spinning while I'd been trapped in a snowstorm, falling in love with a woman I couldn't have. Victoria's office door stayed closed all morning. I forced myself not to stare at it, not to invent excuses to walk past. Professional distance. The agreement we'd made before the helicopter lifted us away from the cabin. Lunchtime, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text arrived encrypted, careful. Bluebird Cafe. Tomorrow, 6 a.m. Come alone. No signature needed. I knew her handwriting from 1,000 memos, even transmitted through pixels. That night, Hayes called while I unpacked my duffel. Her voice carried studied neutrality. Mom said you got stuck in the storm. Relief hit me. She'd called voluntarily, not because Amanda made her. 3 days in a cabin with my boss, not exactly how I planned to spend the weekend. Was it weird? Loaded question. I navigated carefully. Weird, nobody quiet. We talked a lot, about work mostly. Silence on the other end. Then in a smaller voice, Dad, are you okay? You sound different. Kids notice everything. Hayes had inherited her mother's ability to read subtext. I'm good, sweetheart. Really good. Actually, I wanted to ask, are you free next Saturday? No work emergencies, no excuses. Just you and me. We could hit that bookstore you like, get lunch, maybe catch a movie. Another pause. Longer this time. You promise, like really promise, not the kind you break when clients call. The question drove straight through my chest. I promise, and if I break it, you can choose my punishment. Within reason. A sound that might have been a laugh. Okay, Saturday, but I'm holding you to the punishment thing. Deal. After we hung up, I sat in the dark apartment, letting the conversation settle. Small progress. Fragile trust being rebuilt, one kept promise at a time. The work of years ahead, but at least I was finally doing the work. Bluebird Cafe occupied a brick building in Reno, far enough from downtown that running into colleagues was unlikely. I arrived at 5:45, ordered coffee. I didn't want claimed a corner booth with sightlines to the door. Victoria entered at 6 exactly wearing jeans and a parka I'd never seen her in. Hair tucked under a knit cap. No makeup, looking younger and more uncertain than she ever did behind her desk. She spotted me, that ordered at the counter, slid into the booth across from me. For 30 seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she wrapped both hands around her mug. This is insane. Meeting like we're having an affair. Technically, we're not having an affair. We're 2 colleagues getting coffee before work. 2 colleagues who spent 3 nights. She stopped, glanced around the nearly empty cafe. You know what happened. Don't pretend this is normal. Nothing about this is normal. But here we are. She took a breath, seemed to gather herself. I've been thinking about what I said in the cabin, about resigning, starting my own firm. It wasn't just emotion talking. I mean it. But I need time to do it right. Transition projects give proper notice. I'm thinking February 1st. That's 6 weeks. I know, but after the Riverside decision on January 2nd, I'll be free of the most pressing responsibility. I can hand that project to whoever they choose, wrap up my other commitments, and walk away clean. January 2nd, less than 2 weeks away. The project I'd spent months preparing it for, the one that could define my next decade at the firm. With Victoria recusing herself from the decision, I'd lost my strongest advocate. She must have read something in my expression. Garrett, you know I can't be involved in choosing the lead architect. Not now. The board would ask questions I can't answer. I know, it's just Timothy has connections I don't. The MIT network, the right country clubs, parents who summer in the Hamptons. I'm the guy who worked 3 jobs through college and still graduated with debt. Your designs are better than his. The board will see that. Will they? Or will they see credentials and connections and play it safe? She reached across the table, stopped just short of touching my hand. Either way, we can't let the outcome change what we decided. If you get the project, wonderful. If you don't, we move forward anyway. I'm not resigning because of your career. I'm doing it because I've spent 20 years building someone else's dream, and I'm done. The words settled between us, a declaration of independence that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. When should how do we wait? She pulled her hand back, wrapped it around her mug again. Until February 1st, until I'm no longer your supervisor. Then we can figure out what this is without policies and boards and professional ethics hanging over us. 6 weeks feels like forever. It's 6 weeks. You've waited 5 years already. What's another month and a half? Everything I wanted to say. Everything when I finally knew she wanted this too. But she was right. Rushing would only create problems we couldn't solve. We finished our coffee talking about safe things, the storm damage in the mountains, holiday plans with family. Anything but the truth humming between us like live voltage. When we left, she walked to her car, I walked to mine. No goodbye kiss, no lingering touch. Just 2 colleagues who'd shared coffee before work. I watched her drive away and felt the loss like physics. Something tangible and measurable and absolutely real. Christmas Eve, Hayes arrived at my apartment with a backpack and low expectations. Amanda dropped her off with a reminder about picking her up at noon on Christmas Day. Co-parenting at its finest, splitting holidays according to decree, not desire. We made sugar cookies from a mix, decorated them with icing that was more mess than art. Hayes talked about school, about her friends, about everything except the divorce or my failures as a father. The elephant in the room had grown comfortable furniture and wouldn't leave. Around 8, while the cookies cooled, Hayes looked up from her phone. Dad, can I ask you something? Dread crept up my spine. Nothing good ever followed that preamble. Always. Are you happy? Like really happy, not just pretending for me? The question caught me unprepared. Kids weren't supposed to worry about their parents' happiness. That was backward, upside down, all wrong. I'm working on it, sweetheart, learning how to be better. It's a process. She set down her phone, actually made eye contact. You seem different since you got back from the mountains. Not bad different. Just, I don't know, like you woke up or something. Smart kid, too smart for her own good. Maybe I did, a little. Sometimes it takes getting stuck somewhere to realize you've been stuck in other ways too. That sounds like fortune cookie wisdom. I laughed, couldn't help it. Yeah, it does, but it's true. I've been stuck in patterns that don't work. Choosing wrong priorities, taking people for granted. I paused, chose my next words carefully. Especially you. I've taken you for granted, Hayes. Assumed you'd always be there, always forgive me for not showing up. And I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. Her eyes went bright. 12 years old and already learning that apologies could hurt as much as they healed. I don't want you to be sorry, Dad. I want you to be here. Like actually here, not just physically present while your brain is somewhere else. I know, I'm trying. Saturday, right? Bookstore and lunch and a movie. No excuses. She nodded, wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. You're really trying this time, aren't you? With everything I have. We ate cookies and watched a Christmas movie neither of us particularly cared about. But we watched together, and that mattered more than the movie. After she fell asleep on the couch, I carried her to the guest room, tucked her in like I used to when she was small enough to believe her father could fix anything. Now she was old enough to know the truth. Some things stayed broken, no matter how hard you tried to repair them. But maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from the pieces. Midnight, my phone rang. Unknown number again. I stepped onto the balcony where cold air and darkness offered privacy. Hello? It's me. Victoria's voice carried a quality I'd never heard in it before. Something fragile and lost. I'm sorry to call so late. I didn't know who else. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. It's stupid. A shaky breath. I'm sitting in my apartment alone on Christmas Eve drinking wine I can't taste, and I realized I hate holidays. Have always hated them. All that forced cheer and family togetherness just highlights how empty my life is. Victoria, I have money, I have success, I have a penthouse apartment with a view that costs more than most people's houses. But I'm 48 years old and I'm spending Christmas alone because I don't have family that wants me around or friends who aren't really employees in disguise. I pressed the phone closer, wished I could reach through it somehow. You're not alone, not anymore. I'm here. You're with your daughter, where you should be. And you called me anyway, because you knew I'd answer. Because whatever this thing is between us, it means you're not alone, even when we're apart. Silence. Then so quiet I almost missed it. I'm scared, Garrett. Terrified. Because for the first time in a decade, I want something more than I want safety. And wanting things means they can be taken away. Then we'll be scared together. 6 weeks, remember February 1st, and then we'll figure out how to build something that can't be taken away. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise I'll try. And I can promise that next Christmas, you won't be alone unless you choose to be. She laughed, watery and rough. That's a long time from now. Then consider it motivation to make it to February 1st without running away. I don't run away. I strategically retreat. Call it whatever you want. Just don't retreat from this. From us. We talked for another hour. About nothing important and everything essential. When we finally hung up, the apartment felt less empty, like her voice had filled spaces I hadn't noticed were hollow. January 2nd arrived with Denver's particular brand of winter cold and bright and merciless. The board meeting started at 9. I wasn't invited, of course. Just the partners and senior leadership making decisions that would reshape lives and careers. Victoria had told me she'd recuse herself. Let the board choose based on merit and experience and whatever other criteria rich men used to judge which architect got to build their vanity projects. I tried to work, stared at blueprints that might as well have been written in Sanskrit, drank coffee until my hands shook, watched the clock crawl toward noon when they'd announced the decision. 11:45, Timothy stopped by my desk. His smile had edges. Big day, huh? Wonder who they'll choose. I kept my voice level. May the best design win. That's the thing about best, though. It's subjective. Sometimes it's not about the design at all. It's about who you know, who trusts you, who believes you can handle the pressure. Meaning, he leaned against my desk, casual as poison. Meaning I've got relationships with the Dubai developers. My father golfs with half the board. And I didn't spend 3 days in a cabin doing God knows what with my boss. My blood went ice. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. You and Victoria were alone for 3 days. She comes back acting weird, refusing to participate in the Riverside decision. You think people don't notice patterns? You think the board doesn't ask questions when their department heads suddenly can't evaluate one specific architect? We were trapped in a storm. Nothing happened. His smile widened. Sure, nothing happened, which is why she won't even look at you in meetings anymore. Why you both show up separately to everything. Why the temperature in any room you share together could freeze hell. He pushed off from my desk. Anyway, good luck. You're going to need it. Noon came. Email from Victoria's assistant sent to all architects. The board has selected Timothy Bradford to lead the Riverside Luxury Development Project. Congratulations to Timothy. Thank you to all who submitted proposals. That was it. Years of work, months of preparation, the project that was supposed to prove something, gone. Given to a man with the right connections and zero compunction about using personal information as leverage. I sat at my desk, staring at the email, feeling something inside me crack. My phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. I'm sorry, they didn't consult me. Come to my office. I walked through the hall in a fog. Colleagues offered sympathetic looks or avoided eye contact entirely. Everyone knew losing the Riverside project marked me as second tier, as someone who'd never quite make it to the top. Victoria's door was open. She stood at her window back to the entrance, shoulders rigid with tension. I closed the door behind me. They chose Timothy. She didn't turn. I know. Robert called me after to explain. Said Timothy had better relationships with the Dubai team, said they needed someone with international experience. Said, her voice cracked, said they had concerns about my judgment lately and wanted to make the choice without my input. He sabotaged me, told the board there was something between us, nothing specific but enough to plant doubt. Now she turned. Her face was pale, eyes bright with unshed tears and fury. That's harassment. We can file a complaint, take it to HR, make sure and say what? That he told the truth because he did, Victoria. There is something between us. We both know it. Fighting him means lying, and I'm done lying. So that's it. You just accept it. What choice do I have? Fight and expose us both. Pretend the cabin didn't happen. Go back to admiring you from a distance and hating myself for being a coward. She crossed the space between us, got close enough that I could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive that I'd memorized in 3 days. I'm resigning today, not February 1st, right now. I'll tell the board I've decided to pursue other opportunities. They'll scramble, but that's not my problem anymore. Victoria, no, you need time to transition properly. You can't just watch me. The determination in her voice could cut glass. You'll burn bridges, make enemies. The architectural community in Denver is small. You'll need references, connection support when you start your own firm. I have $45 million and 20 years of experience. I don't need their references or their approval. What I need is to stop letting fear dictate my choices. She grabbed her purse from the desk, started pulling personal items from drawers. Pictures awards the leather portfolio with her secret designs. Victoria, stop. Think about this. I have thought about it every day since the cabin, every night lying awake wondering if I'm brave enough to choose myself over expectation. And the answer is yes, I'm brave enough. Or maybe I'm just done being afraid. 20 minutes later, she'd packed everything into 2 cardboard boxes. Her office looked stripped, impersonal, like she'd never occupied it at all. She carried one box, I carried the other. The elevator ride down happened in silence. Colleagues stared, but nobody asked questions. Victoria Ashford, leaving with boxes midday, sent a message nobody needed translated. At her car, she loaded the boxes into the trunk. Where do you go from here? Her smile was grim. Home to draft a resignation letter, then to my lawyer to start paperwork for my own firm. Then, she paused. Then I figure out how to be the person I should have been all along. And us, I'm not your boss anymore. The policy doesn't apply. So us is whatever we make it. If you still want there to be an us after I just destroyed my career for you. I pulled her close right there in the parking garage where anyone could see. I didn't ask you to destroy your career. No, you asked me to be brave. And this is what brave looks like for me. Terrifying and possibly stupid and absolutely necessary. She kissed me like she meant it, like consequences didn't matter anymore, because she'd already accepted them all. When she drove away, I stood in the garage feeling split between triumph and terror. She'd done it, actually done it, walked away from everything to make space for something new. Now I had to figure out what to do with the gift she'd given us. 3 days later, I submitted my own resignation. 2 weeks' notice, effective immediately. No drama, no accusations, just a quiet departure from a firm that had never quite felt like home anyway. Timothy found me cleaning out my desk. Running away, that's not very professional. I looked up at him, this man who'd sabotaged me out of jealousy or ambition or whatever motivated people to destroy others for personal gain. I'm not running, I'm choosing. There's a difference. Choosing what unemployment following Victoria like some lovesick puppy. choosing to build something real instead of competing for scraps from men who will never respect me anyway. But thanks for the concern. His expression shifted. Something like uncertainty flickered there. You're making a mistake. Starting over at 54 in this economy, you'll be back begging for your job in 6 months. Maybe, or maybe I'll build something better than anything I could have done here. Either way, it'll be mine, and that's worth the risk. I carried my box to the elevator, rode down one last time, walked out of the building into January cold that felt like freedom. My phone rang. Amanda's number. Hello. Hayes wants to talk to you now. She's upset and won't tell me why. Panic spiked. Put her on. Rustling, then Hayes's voice tear thick and furious. Dad, what did you do? What do you mean, sir? Mom showed me an article about Victoria Ashford resigning suddenly. About you leaving too. About Dad, people are saying things. That you had an affair with your boss. That you got her fired. That you're some kind of... Hayes, stop. Listen to me. None of that is true. Then what is true because something happened and you're leaving your mom and mom is freaking out, saying you're going through a midlife crisis and I don't know what to believe. The desperation in her voice broke something in me. Can you come over tonight? I'll explain everything. The truth, all of it. You deserve that. Mom won't let me. She says you are not stable right now. She says, Hayes's voice dropped to a whisper. She says she might file for full custody. That this proves you are not capable of being a good influence. The ground shifted beneath me. She can't do that. We have an agreement. She says agreements can change when circumstances change. Dad, I'm scared. Everything is falling apart, and I don't understand what's happening. I pressed my palm against my forehead, tried to think through rising panic. Nothing is falling apart, sweetheart. I'm making changes, yes. Big changes, but they're good changes. Healthy changes. Changes that will make me a better father. By quitting your job and dating your boss. By finally putting the people I love ahead of my career. By taking risks that terrify me because the alternative is living a half-life forever. By showing you that it's never too late to choose happiness over safety. She was quiet. I could hear her breathing, could picture her processing, trying to reconcile the father she knew with this stranger making reckless decisions. Is she worth it? This Victoria person, is she worth destroying everything for? The question demanded honesty. I'm not destroying everything. I'm building something new, and yes, she's worth it. But more than that, I'm worth it. The person I'm becoming, the father who shows up, who keeps promises, who doesn't hide behind work to avoid real connection, he's worth it. And I need you to trust me long enough to see that. What if I can't? What if mom's right and you're just, I don't know, losing it? Then I'll prove you both wrong, one kept promise at a time. Starting with Saturday. Bookstore lunch movie. Remember, unless your mother won't let you come. She won't. She already said no. She says you're unstable and she needs to protect me from your bad decisions. Rage and helplessness warred in my chest. Then I'll talk to her. Work something out. But Hayes, I need you to know none of this is about loving you less. It's about learning to love better. Can you believe that? Even if you don't understand it yet. Long silence. Then so quiet I almost missed it. I want to, but I'm scared, Dad, of all the changes, of losing you even more than I already have. You're not losing me. You're getting more of me. The real me, I promise. After we hung up, I sat in my car staring at the phone, feeling everything I'd tried to build crumbling in real time. Amanda threatening custody, Hayes scared and confused, my career gone. Victoria's reputation damaged by association. Maybe Timothy was right. Maybe I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Or maybe this was what transformation looked like, messy and terrifying and absolutely necessary. January 18th. A Saturday, I woke to pounding on my apartment door. 9 in the morning, too early for anyone who meant well. I opened it to find Hayes standing there, backpack on her shoulders, defiance in her eyes. How did you get here? Bus, looked up the route online. Mom thinks I'm at Jessica's house. I pulled her inside, checked the hallway like Amanda might materialize. Hayes, you can't just, your mother is going to lose her mind. I don't care. I needed to see you, to understand what's happening. Because everyone's talking about you like you're crazy or having an affair or ruining your life. And I just want to know the truth. Not the version mom tells me or the version your colleagues gossip about. Your version. She dropped her backpack, crossed her arms, waited. I made coffee for me, hot chocolate for her. We sat at my small kitchen table, and I told her everything. The cabin, the storm, Victoria, not the intimate details, but the emotional truth. About being trapped with someone and discovering they were real, not just fantasy. About choosing love over fear for the first time in my adult life. About Victoria walking away from her career because she wanted to design instead of manage, wanted to build her own dream Diane instead of maintaining someone else's. Hayes listened without interrupting. When I finished, she stared into her mug. So you really love her. This isn't just, I don't know, old guy panic about aging. I really love her. And yes, it's terrifying. Yes, the timing is terrible. Yes, I'm risking everything. But Hayes, I've spent your whole life playing it safe and being miserable. I chose safe over happy for so long, I forgot they weren't the same thing. And I'm done. I'm choosing happy now, even if it's scary. She looked up. Does she love you back? She says she does. She quit her job to prove it. That's insane. Probably, but it's also brave. And I want you to see that sometimes the bravest thing is admitting you want something different than what you have. Hayes set down her mug, pulled her phone out. What's her address? What, Victoria? What's her address? I want to meet her. Hayes, you can't just... You said she's real, that she's not some fantasy or mistake. So prove it. Let me meet her. Let me decide if she's worth what you're giving up. The logic was pure 12-year-old, simple and impossible to argue with. She lives downtown, but you can't just show up at someone's apartment. Watch me. 30 minutes later, we stood in the lobby of Victoria's building. The doorman eyed Hayes with suspicion, a kid with a backpack, clearly too young to be visiting alone. Can I help you? Hayes stepped forward with confidence I hadn't taught her. I need to see Victoria Ashford. It's important. Ms. Ashford isn't expecting visitors. She'll want to see me. Tell her Hayes Sullivan is here. She'll understand. The doorman hesitated, then picked up his phone. Murmured conversation I couldn't hear. He hung up, surprise clear on his face. She says to send you up. 20th floor, unit 2004. The elevator ride up felt like descending into cold water pressure, building oxygen thinning. Hayes stood beside me, radiating determination and barely suppressed nerves. The elevator opened directly into Victoria's apartment. Penthouse living, open floor plan, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Denver's skyline. And Victoria standing in the middle of it all, wearing jeans and an oversized sweater, hair in a messy bun, looking nothing like the ice queen from The Office. She looked at Hayes, then at me. Your daughter, I assume. Hayes stepped forward. I'm Hayes, and I came to tell you that you're messing up my dad's life. Victoria's eyebrows rose, but she didn't flinch. Everyone says he's having a midlife crisis, that he quit his job for you, that you're using him or he's using you or both of you are just, I don't know, being stupid. Hayes, I started, but Victoria held up a hand. No, let her talk. She has a right to be angry. Hayes's confidence wavered slightly, but she pushed forward. Are you real? Or is this just some fling that'll be over in a month and my dad will have given up everything for nothing? Victoria moved to her kitchen, pulled out 3 mugs. Hot chocolate, I have the good stuff. With real cocoa, not the powdered junk. Hayes blinked, thrown by the casual response. I guess. While Victoria made drinks, she talked. Your father has told me about you. How smart you are. How you play violin. How you collect rocks and make up stories about them. How he spent 3 years trying to earn back your trust after choosing work over you too many times. She handed Hayes a mug, then me. Am I real? Yes. Am I perfect? God, no. I'm 48 years old and I've spent most of my life alone because I was too scared to let anyone close. Your father is the first person in a decade who's made me want to try. Is it a midlife crisis? Maybe. But it's also the first time I've felt alive in 20 years. Hayes sipped her chocolate, considering. My dad says you quit your job because you wanted to design buildings instead of just managing people. That's true. I've been running my grandfather's company for 20 years, proving myself to people who never thought I belonged there. And I'm tired. I want to create things. I want to take risks. She paused, looked at me. I want to build a life that's mine, not one I inherited or one people expect me to have. So my dad is part of that life. If he wants to be, if you'll let him be. Hayes turned to me. Do you want to be? The question held more weight than 12 years should carry. More than anything. Even if it means mom gets mad, even if custody stuff gets messy, even if I'm mad sometimes because this is all confusing and scary, even then, because the alternative is pretending nothing changed. And everything changed, Hayes. In that cabin in 3 days, I finally understood that the life I was living wasn't the life I wanted. And I'm done settling for comfortable misery when I could have scary happiness. Hayes looked between us. The weight of judgment in her eyes felt crushing. You really love him? She asked Victoria directly. I do, even though it's terrifying. Even though I spent 10 years telling myself I'd never risk this again. Even though loving someone means they could hurt you worse than anyone else. Yes, I love him. And you, ooh, she turned to me. You're not going to mess this up like you messed up with mom. You're not going to choose work over everything again. I can't promise I'll be perfect, but I can promise I'll try, and I can promise that you come first. Before work, before Victoria, before anything. You're my daughter. That doesn't change no matter what else does. Hayes stood there, mug in both hands, processing. Then she did something I didn't expect. She started crying, not quiet tears, full sobs that shook her whole body. Victoria moved first wrapped arms around Hayes before I could react. Hey, it's okay. Whatever you're feeling, it's okay. Hayes's words came muffled against Victoria's sweater. I was so scared that Dad would forget about me if he fell in love with someone else, that I'd lose him even more than I already have, that I'd have to share him and there wouldn't be enough Dad to go around. Victoria held her, looked at me over Hayes's head with eyes that said, handle this. I knelt down to Hayes's level. Sweetheart, listen to me. Love doesn't divide. It multiplies. Loving Victoria doesn't mean loving you less. It means I have more love to give because I'm finally learning how to be happy, and happy people make better fathers. Okay. She pulled back from Victoria, wiped her face with her sleeve. You promise, really, truly promise you are not going to forget about me. I promise. Cross my heart and hope to die. That's baby stuff. Then how about this? Every Saturday is ours, you and me, no matter what. Victoria can join if you want, but it's your choice. Always your choice. Hayes looked at Victoria. Would you really be okay with that? Sharing him, Victoria smiled and it transformed her face into something warm and genuine. Hayes, I don't want to replace your mother or compete for your father. I just want to be, if you'll let me, someone who cares about both of you. Someone who shows up. Someone who doesn't make promises she can't keep. Can you build things like actually build with your hands? The question seemed random, but Victoria rolled with it. I can design buildings. I'm pretty useless with actual construction, but I can draw things. Why? Because Dad and I used to build stuff together before the divorce, and I miss it. And if you're going to be around, you should probably know how to build things. I watched Victoria's expression soften, watched her recognize the olive branch being extended. I'd like that, learning to build things with you, both of you. My phone buzzed, Amanda's number. I'd forgotten Hayes was supposed to be at Jessica's house. I answered. Garrett, where is Hayes? Jessica's mom just called saying Hayes never showed up and she's with me. She's safe. She's what? How did you take her? Did you violate custody too? Amanda, stop. She came here on her own, took the bus because she needed answers I couldn't give her over the phone. The bus, she's 12 years old. Anything could have happened. I'm calling my lawyer right now and Victoria plucked the phone from my hand. Mrs. Sullivan, this is Victoria Ashford. I understand you're upset, but Hayes is safe. She's been here with your ex-husband and me for the past hour, asking very intelligent questions about our relationship and her father's recent choices. She's handling this situation with more maturity than most adults I know, and she deserves credit for that. Silence on the other end. Then Amanda's voice, icy and formal. And you are, I'm the woman your ex-husband is dating. I'm also the woman who just made Hayes the best hot chocolate she's ever had. Her words, not mine, and who's been having a very honest conversation about what changes mean and how families adapt. Would you like to speak with her? Victoria held the phone out to Hayes. Hayes took it, walked to the windows for privacy. I looked at Victoria. You just made everything worse. Or I just made everything clear. No more hiding, no more pretending. Amanda needed to know this is real, that I'm not going anywhere, that Hayes is going to have to deal with me being in her father's life, and we might as well start building that relationship now rather than later. She's going to go nuclear, file for full custody, drag this through courts, make everything as messy as possible. Let her, we'll deal with it, together. Hayes returned and handed me the phone. Mom wants to talk to you. Amanda's voice could freeze nitrogen. Bring her home, now. We'll discuss your visitation schedule with lawyers present. This stunt both you and Hayes pulling, this proves you're not capable of responsible parenting. Amanda, please, don't do this. Don't use Hayes as a weapon because you're angry at me. I'm not using anyone. I'm protecting my daughter from her father's midlife crisis. Bring her home, now. The line went dead. Victoria touched my arm. She can't actually restrict your custody without going through courts. And that takes time. Time where Hayes gets caught in the middle of a war between her parents. Time where she suffers because I fell in love. Hayes stepped between us. Stop. Both of you, stop acting like I'm some fragile thing that'll break if my parents fight. Mom's mad. She'll cool down. And if she doesn't, I'll tell the judge I want to be here. With Dad. With you if you're not too weird about it. She looked at Victoria directly. You make him happy. I can see it. He's been sad for 3 years and now he's not, and that's because of you. So don't let Mom scare you away. Okay. Victoria nodded, too moved to speak. I drove Hayes home through afternoon traffic that felt like swimming through concrete. At Amanda's house, my ex-wife waited on the porch, arms crossed, fury radiating like heat. Hayes got out, walked to her mother. They disappeared inside without Amanda acknowledging my existence. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Amanda. We need to talk. Tomorrow. Coffee. Neutral territory. Okay. And Garrett, if you ever pull something like this again, having our daughter trek across the city to meet your girlfriend without telling me, I will make your life hell. Noted. But even through her anger, I heard something else. Resignation, maybe. Or the beginning of acceptance. Time would tell which. February 1st, the date Victoria had circled on her mental calendar. The day she officially became a former employee of Ashford and Partners. The day we could stop hiding. She'd spent January laying groundwork. Filed paperwork for Ashford Design Studio. Rented a small office space in the art district. Hired a part-time assistant. Built a website showcasing those designs from her leather portfolio. And she'd asked me to join as a partner. Equal equity, equal say. Building something together from the ground up. I'd accepted on January 15th, signing papers that made it official. We were partners in every sense now. Professional, romantic, legally bound in ways that should have terrified me, but felt like coming home. March 3rd, Amanda asked to meet for coffee. Not to fight, the text said, to talk. We sat in a Starbucks in Boulder neutral territory, both wary. She looked tired, older than I remembered, or maybe I just hadn't really looked at her in years. Hayes talks about Victoria constantly. Amanda stirred her latte without drinking it. About their design sessions, about learning architecture software, about building model buildings from cardboard and hot glue. She's been great with Hayes, better than I expected. I wanted to hate her, spent all of January trying to cast her as the villain in this story, the other woman who stole my ex-husband and confused my daughter. Amanda. Let me finish. I wanted to hate her, but I can't. Because Hayes is happy. Actually happy, not just pretending. She talks about you differently now. Like you're a real father instead of an obligation. The words hit harder than anger would have. I'm trying, finally trying. She looked up, met my eyes. You're succeeding. And as much as it kills me to admit this, Victoria is good for you. Good for Hayes. She's not trying to replace me or compete with me. She's just there, present, which is more than you ever managed while we were married. I know, I'm sorry. I don't need apologies anymore, Garrett. I need you to keep showing up. Keep putting Hayes first. Keep being this version of yourself that actually gives a damn about something other than career advancement. That's the plan, she nodded slowly. Then I'm not fighting you on custody. Joint 50-50. But if you backslide, if you start missing Hayes's events or breaking promises, I will revisit this. Clear. Crystal. We finished our coffee in easier silence. Not friends exactly, but no longer enemies either. Co-parents doing their best with the mess we'd made. April 15th, the day I'd planned everything perfectly. Reservation at Victoria's favorite restaurant. Vintage sapphire ring I'd bought after 3 weeks of searching. Hayes would be with Amanda giving us privacy. I'd rehearsed the words, practiced the moment, prepared for every contingency, except the one that happened. Victoria's phone rang at 7 a.m. She answered, listened, went pale. Which hospital? I'm on my way. She hung up, grabbed her keys. My father, heart attack. He's at Denver General. 5 years of estrangement dissolved in an instant. However much James Ashford had hurt her, he was still her father. Still the man whose approval she'd spent a lifetime chasing and never quite reaching. I'm coming with you. She didn't argue. The hospital smelled like every hospital antiseptic and fear and too much industrial cleaning. We found James in the cardiac ICU, tubes and monitors turning him into a piece of medical equipment. Victoria stood in the doorway, frozen. I don't know how to. You go in, sit with him, hold his hand. The rest will come. She entered slowly, pulled a chair close to the bed. I gave her space, waited in the hallway where I couldn't hear what she said but could see her shoulders shake with sobs she'd held back for years. 2 hours later, a doctor emerged. Stable condition, good prognosis. He'd survived this one. Victoria found me in the waiting room, makeup destroyed, eyes red. Thank you for coming, for being here when I couldn't ask anyone else to be. I pulled her close. Where else would I be? We stayed until visiting hours ended. Drove back to her apartment in silence. She didn't want to be alone, so I stayed. Held her while she processed emotions too complicated for words. Around midnight, she turned in my arms. I had a whole speech prepared. About fear and risk and choosing love over safety. About wanting to spend the rest of my life learning how to be brave with you. But I can't. I'm too tired and scared and... Then don't. We'll do speeches later. Right now, just be here. Let me hold you. That's enough. She nodded, burrowed closer. When I thought I might lose him, my father, even though we haven't spoken in 5 years, I realized how much time I've wasted being angry, being hurt, holding grudges because pride was safer than forgiveness. And I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to waste time we don't have, being too proud to admit I need people. Good, because I need you too. And that's not weakness, it's just truth. She fell asleep around 2. I stayed awake watching her breathe, feeling the weight of what we were building. Something real and messy, and absolutely worth every risk we'd taken to get here. Morning came gray and gentle. Victoria stirred, opened her eyes. Good morning. Morning. She touched my face, traced the line of my jaw. I love you, Garrett Sullivan. Even though it terrifies me. Even though I have no idea how to do this right. Even though my father might be dying and your ex-wife hates me and Hayes is still figuring out how she feels about all this. I love you. I love you too, even though you're bossy and stubborn and too smart for my own good. She laughed, watery but real. What happens now? Now we get through today, visit your father, make sure he's okay, deal with whatever crisis comes next. And somewhere in all that, we keep building this life we started in a snowstorm. That's not much of a plan. No, but it's honest. And right now, honest is all I've got. She kissed me soft and sweet and tasting like morning and hope and all the messy, beautiful complications love brings. Then honest will have to be enough. We got up, made coffee, prepared to face whatever the day brought. Together, the way we'd face everything from now on. James Ashford opened his eyes on April 16th around 10 in the morning. The hospital room smelled sterile, too bright under fluorescent lights. Monitors beeped their steady rhythm. Victoria sat beside the bed holding his hand, looking like she hadn't slept. His gaze moved past her to me standing by the window. Confusion flickered across his weathered face. Who's this? Victoria straightened, squeezed his hand gently. Someone important to me, Dad. Someone I should have introduced you to years ago if we'd been speaking. Recognition dawned slowly. James's voice came rough from intubation. The architect from your firm, my partner, in every way. Something shifted in James's expression, not anger or judgment, something softer, almost like relief. He stayed with you through the night. Yes. James turned his attention fully to me. You look tired, both of you do. I moved closer to the bed. It's been a long night, Mr. Ashford. James, if you're important to my daughter, we're past formalities. He paused, seemed to gather strength. Victoria, there are things I should have said 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20. Victoria's grip on his hand tightened. Dad, you should rest. We can talk later. No, I might not get another chance to say this. He took a shallow breath. I resented you for inheriting everything. Your grandfather's money, his company, his legacy. He left me a salary and a title, but gave you the kingdom. And instead of being proud, instead of seeing that he made the right choice because you were stronger, smarter, better than I ever was, I let jealousy poison everything. Tears tracked down Victoria's face. You were my father. You were supposed to love you unconditionally, support you, be proud of everything you accomplished. I know, and I failed. Spectacularly. What kind of man resents his own daughter for being successful? What kind of father walks away because his ego couldn't handle being less than his child? His own eyes went bright. Your grandfather was right about everything. He saw what I couldn't, that you had his vision, his drive, his integrity, that you'd build something extraordinary if given the chance. And you did, despite me, despite every obstacle I threw in your path by being absent when you needed me most. Victoria's voice broke. I just wanted you to be proud of me. Just once. That's all I ever wanted. I was always proud of you. I was just too damaged by my own inadequacy to admit it, too wrapped up in my failure to celebrate your success. He looked at me. You make her happy. Really happy. Not just comfortable. I'm trying to every day. Good, because she deserves someone who sees how extraordinary she is. Someone who doesn't feel threatened by her brilliance but celebrates it. He turned back to Victoria. I've wasted 5 years being proud from a distance when I should have been telling you to your face. I'm sorry, sweetheart, for all of it. Victoria collapsed forward, sobbing into the thin hospital blanket. James lifted his other hand, the one not connected to an IV, and touched her hair like he used to when she was small. I love you, Victoria. I always have. I just forgot how to show it. I stepped outside, gave them privacy for reconciliation too intimate for witnesses. Sat in the hallway on plastic chairs designed to discourage comfort and felt the weight of what I'd just witnessed. A family knitting itself back together after years of tearing apart. 20 minutes later, Victoria emerged. Her face was blotchy makeup destroyed again, but something in her posture had shifted, like she'd been carrying weight for decades and finally set it down. He wants to meet Hayes, says any granddaughter of his deserves to know her grandfather. That's Victoria, that's wonderful. I know. It's terrifying and wonderful, and I don't know how to feel about any of it except grateful that he's alive to have the chance. We stayed at the hospital until evening, visiting hours ended. Drove back to her apartment, where she immediately fell asleep in her clothes, exhausted by emotion and sleeplessness. I called Hayes, explained what happened. Her response came immediate. Is Victoria okay? Not asking about me or the situation or what it meant for us. Just genuine concern for someone she'd decided to care about. She will be. It's complicated, but good complicated. Tell her I'm thinking about her. And Dad, I'm proud of you for being there, for showing up. After we hung up, I sat in Victoria's dark living room, looking out at Denver's glittering skyline, thinking about families and forgiveness and how quickly everything could change. The ring box in my coat pocket felt like it weighed 10 pounds. I'd planned tonight down to the minute. Perfect restaurant, perfect words, perfect moment. But perfection didn't matter anymore. What mattered was being present for the messy, imperfect reality of the life we were building. April 17th, 3 in the morning. Victoria couldn't sleep, kept getting up to check her phone for updates from the hospital. I finally convinced her to eat something. We found ourselves in the hospital cafeteria, the only place open at this hour. Vending machine coffee and stale muffins, fluorescent lights humming overhead, a janitor mopping floors in the corner. Not romantic, not planned, not anything close to what I'd imagined, which made it perfect. I pulled the ring box from my pocket, set it on the scarred table between us. Victoria stared at it like it might explode. Garrett, what? I was going to do this last night. Had reservations at that French place you love. Candles, wine, probably too much money spent on ambiance. A whole speech I'd been practicing for weeks. But I learned something important. Perfect moments don't exist. Real moments do. Like right now in a hospital cafeteria at 3 in the morning when we're both exhausted and scared and you have coffee breath and I probably look like death. She laughed despite herself. That's your pitch. I have coffee breath. My pitch is this. I opened the box. The sapphire caught the harsh light, threw blue fire across the table. Victoria Ashford, you taught me that it's never too late to choose love, to choose family, to choose the life you actually want instead of the one you think you should have. You walked away from safety because you wanted something real. You forgave your father because holding grudges cost more than risking hurt. You showed me what brave looks like. I got down on one knee on the sticky cafeteria floor. Will you marry me? Will you build a life with me that's messy and imperfect and absolutely terrifying? Will you take a chance on a 54-year-old architect who's still figuring out how to be the man his daughter deserves? Tears spilled over her cheeks. Yes, God, yes, 1,000 times yes. I slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit like I'd known it would be. She pulled me up, kissed me hard enough to bruise tasting like bad coffee and all the complicated emotions that come with choosing happiness. Behind us, the janitor started clapping. We broke apart laughing and crying to find him grinning at us. Congratulations. 32 years married myself. Best decision I ever made. Victoria wiped her eyes. Any advice? Yeah, remember this feeling. When things get hard and they will remember that you chose each other when nothing was perfect. That's the good stuff right there. We thanked him, sat back down at the table holding hands across the scarred surface. The best love stories don't happen in perfect places. I threaded my fingers through hers. They happen in hospital cafeterias at 3 a.m. when you realize this person is your home. Wherever they are, that's where you belong. She looked at the ring on her finger, turning her hand to catch the light. Hayes is going to lose her mind. Hayes is currently hiding in the hallway behind the vending machines. Has been for about 5 minutes. Victoria's head snapped up. What? Hayes emerged, grinning wider than I'd seen in years. I knew it. I knew you were going to propose. Dad's been weird for weeks and kept checking his coat pocket, and I just knew. Victoria stood open to her arms. Hayes crashed into her without hesitation. Welcome to the family, I guess, officially. I'd be honored if you'll have me. You make him happy. You show up. You keep promises. That's all I need. I watched them hold each other, touched by daughter and my fiancé, building something that looked a lot like family. The janitor kept mopping, humming something that might have been a wedding march. May brought Denver's particular brand of spring, wildly unpredictable snow one day and 70 degrees the next. Ashford Design Studio occupied a converted warehouse space in the art district, all exposed brick and steel beams and windows that flooded everything with light. Our first major contract came from an unexpected source. A developer in Boulder wanted to build an eco-friendly residential community, 30 homes, all sustainable materials, solar power, rainwater collection, the works. The kind of project that mattered beyond profit margins. Victoria handled the business side with ease, earned from 20 years running her grandfather's company. I designed buildings that balance environmental responsibility with beauty. We worked side by side, equals in every sense, and discovered that partnership felt better than competition ever had. June arrived with Hayes out of school for summer. Amanda called to discuss custody arrangements. She wants to spend most of the summer with you, with both of you, says she wants to learn architecture from Victoria. The olive branch came wrapped in Amanda's reluctant acceptance. Are you okay with that? Do I have a choice? She's 12, nearly 13, old enough to have opinions about where she wants to be. A pause. And Garrett, she's happy, really happy. I can hear it in her voice when she talks about design projects with Victoria and Saturday mornings with you. So yeah, I'm okay with it. Just keep being this version of yourself, the one who shows up. That's the only version I want to be anymore. Hayes moved into the guest room, transformed it with posters of famous buildings and sketches she'd started drawing. Victoria set up a drafting table in the corner of our office, taught Hayes the basics of architectural software. Watching them work together, Victoria, patient and encouraging, Hayes focused and determined, felt like watching foundations being poured, the kind that lasted generations. One afternoon in late June, Hayes looked up from a design she'd been working on. "Can I be an architect like you guys? Is that allowed?" Victoria didn't hesitate. "You can be anything you want. Architect, doctor, professional rock collector. What matters is finding work that makes you excited to get up in the morning." But is it hard being a woman in architecture? Everyone says there aren't many. It's harder than it should be. People will underestimate you, question your authority, and assume men around you are more competent. But that's why we need more women, more people who see problems differently, more voices that don't sound like the ones that have always dominated. Hayes nodded, seriously absorbing this. "Then I want to do it. Want to prove I can. Want to design buildings that make people happy." I looked at Victoria over Hayes's bent head. She smiled at me, the kind that said, "We're building something good here." July brought wedding planning. We kept it simple, 40 guests, close friends and family. The location chose itself. The cabin. Victoria made the decision over breakfast one morning, where it started, where we finally stopped pretending and let ourselves be real with each other. It's small, might be cramped with 40 people. Then we'll be cramped. I don't want some sterile venue with a coordinator telling us where to stand. I want the place that mattered, the place where everything changed. We booked it for December 15th, exactly 1 year after the storm that had transformed everything. August brought an unexpected encounter at an industry conference in Colorado Springs. I was examining green building materials at a vendor booth when a familiar voice spoke behind me. "Sullivan, didn't expect to see you here." Timothy Bradford stood there looking uncomfortable. No smirk, no superiority, just a man who'd realized he'd burned bridges and maybe regretted it. "Timothy, I heard about your firm, Ashford Design Studio. Word is you're doing good work. The Boulder Project, that's impressive." "Thank you." Silence stretched between us, filled with history and hurt. Neither of us wanted to address directly. Finally, Timothy exhaled slowly. "Look, I owe you an apology. What I did using personal information to sabotage you with the board, that was wrong. I was jealous and scared, and I lashed out. I'm sorry." The apology landed genuine without self-serving caveats. "You did me a favor, actually. Pushed me to take risks I'd been avoiding. Built something that's mine instead of fighting for scraps. You're happier now, aren't you?" The question held no mockery, just honest curiosity. "Happier than I've ever been." "Good, I'm glad." He shifted his weight. "The Riverside project is behind schedule. Way behind. The Dubai investors are threatening to pull funding. And honestly, it's because I tried to do it alone. Refused to collaborate, insisted my vision was the only one that mattered. Classic mistake." I waited. "Would Ashford Design be interested in consulting? Coming in, fixing what's broken, getting us back on track? I'll clear it with the board. Pay whatever rate you want. I need help. And you're the best designer I know, even if I was too proud to admit it before." The request caught me off guard. Timothy Bradford asking for help felt like snow in July, unexpected but real. "I'll discuss it with my partner. If Victoria agrees and the terms are right, we might consider it." He nodded, relieved. "Thank you, really, and congratulations on the engagement. Victoria's a good woman. Better than I gave her credit for." After he left, I called Victoria. Timothy Bradford just apologized and asked us to consult on Riverside. Her laugh came sharp and delighted. "Did he now?" "What did you tell him?" "That I'd discuss it with my partner." "Smart man." "Here's my answer: only if we do it together. Only if they pay double our going rate. And only if Timothy publicly credits our work. No hiding behind his name, no taking credit for our fixes. We're partners, equals. That's non-negotiable." "I'll let him know." "Good, and Garrett, I'm proud of you. for handling that with grace instead of letting past wounds dictate present choices. 3 days later, Timothy agreed to all terms. We signed the contract, dove into fixing problems he'd created through ego and stubbornness. The work challenged us, pushed our skills, proved we could handle pressure without falling apart. September through November passed in a blur of work and wedding preparation and building the life we'd chosen. Hayes split time between Amanda's house and Victoria's apartment, settling into a routine that felt stable instead of fractured. Victoria's father recovered slowly, started attending Sunday dinners at Victoria's place. The first time he met Hayes, he cried and apologized for missing 12 years of being a grandfather. Hayes, with the directness only kids possess, looked him straight in the eye. "You're here now, that's what matters." Simple wisdom that shamed us all. December 15th arrived cold and crystalline. The cabin looked like something from a snow globe, white everywhere. Icicles hanging from the eaves, smoke curling from the chimney. We decorated simply. Evergreen garlands, white lights, chairs arranged in semicircles facing the fireplace. 40 guests arrived in waves, colleagues from the old firm who'd stayed friends, fellow architects. Victoria respected Amanda, and her new boyfriend, David Hayes's friends, who'd become invested in this love story through Hayes's constant updates. James Ashford wore a suit that hung loose on his thinner frame, but stood straight and proud, ready to walk his daughter down a makeshift aisle toward a future he'd almost missed entirely. I stood by the fireplace where Victoria and I had first held hands, where we'd confessed fears and admitted love, where everything had started. Hayes stood beside me as maid of honor, wearing a dress she'd picked herself, grinning so wide her face might split. The music started, not a wedding march, but the song Victoria said she'd been playing the night she called me from her empty apartment on Christmas Eve. Soft and aching and perfect. Victoria appeared in the doorway. She wore cream silk, simple and elegant, her hair loose like that first morning in the cabin. No veil, no train, nothing to hide behind. Just Victoria choosing to be vulnerable in front of everyone who mattered. James took her arm, walked her slowly toward me. When they reached the fireplace, he kissed her cheek and whispered something that made her eyes shine. Then she stood before me, took my hands, looked at me like I was the only person in the room. The officiant, a friend from college who'd gotten ordained specifically for this, kept it brief. Asked us to share vows we'd written ourselves. I went first, tried to keep my voice steady. "Victoria, 1 year ago, I was trapped in a snowstorm with a woman I thought I could never have. A woman too beautiful, too smart, too successful for a guy like me. Someone I'd spent 5 years admiring from a safe distance because distance meant I couldn't be rejected or disappointed or hurt." I squeezed her hands. But that storm taught me something crucial. The biggest prison isn't a cabin in a blizzard. It's the walls we build around our own hearts. The fear that keeps us alone even in rooms full of people. The belief that safety matters more than connection. Victoria's eyes went bright. "You freed me from that prison. Showed me that risk and reward are inseparable. That love isn't something you control or manage or keep at arm's length. It's something you surrender to completely, knowing it might destroy you but believing it won't. I promise to spend every day making sure you never regret choosing me, to show up when it matters, to be your partner in every sense, to build a life with you that's worthy of the courage you showed by letting me in." Victoria took a shaky breath, started her own vows. "Garrett, I spent 48 years building walls, protecting myself from hurt, from loss, from love itself. After my mother died, after my father withdrew, after my fiancé betrayed me, I decided safety was better than connection. Loneliness was better than vulnerability." She touched my face with fingers that trembled slightly. 2 days in a cabin with you tore down what 48 years had built. And I'm grateful, because loving you is the first brave thing I've ever done just for me. Not for my grandfather's legacy, not to prove something to partners who doubted me. Not because it made strategic sense, but because you make me want to be brave. You make me want to try. I promise to keep choosing bravery, to choose us even when it's scary, to choose love over safety every single day for the rest of my life, and to never forget that the best things in life happen when we stop hiding behind walls and let ourselves be seen. Hayes sniffled loudly beside me. Half the guests were crying openly. The officiant smiled. "By the power vested in me by the state of Colorado and the internet, I now pronounce you married. You may kiss. I pulled Victoria close, kissed her like I'd been waiting a year to do it properly. The room erupted in applause and cheers and Hayes yelling something about finally being official. We broke apart, both laughing and crying, turned to face our guests as husband and wife. The reception happened right there in the cabin. Food catered by a local restaurant, music from a speaker, someone brought champagne that flowed freely. Amanda hugged Victoria and whispered something that made Victoria cry happy tears. James gave a toast about second chances and not wasting time. Hayes made everyone laugh with stories about teaching Victoria to build things and Victoria's complete lack of skill with power tools. Around midnight, most guests had left or claimed rooms at the resort down the mountain. Hayes had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted by excitement. James had returned to his hotel with Amanda and David. Victoria and I stood on the cabin's small deck, looking out at stars so bright and numerous they looked unreal. We did it. She leaned against me, solid and warm. We really did. No regrets. Not a single one. You Sam, I regret waiting so long. I regret the years I wasted being afraid. But I don't regret this, us. Not even for a second. I turned her to face me. I love you, Victoria Sullivan. I love you too, Garrett Sullivan. She paused. That sounds strange. Victoria Sullivan, like I'm someone different now. You are someone different, and we both are. Better versions of ourselves because we found each other. Not found, crashed into, in a blizzard, while terrified and pretending we weren't attracted to each other. Best crash of my life. We went inside, carried Hayes to bed, cleaned up the remnants of celebration. Fell into bed ourselves around 2, exhausted and deliriously happy. 1 year later, December 15th, marked our first anniversary. We returned to the cabin this time, just the 3 of us, me, Victoria, and Hayes, who'd insisted on coming along. Victoria looked different at 5 months pregnant. Softer, somehow glowing with that quality people always talked about, but I'd never believed was real until now. We'd found out in September, surprise and terror and overwhelming more all tangled together. A daughter. Hayes would have a sister by March. Morning brought pancakes, my specialty, now perfected over dozens of Saturday breakfasts. Victoria sat at the small table sketching a design for the house we were building in the foothills. Something bigger than her apartment or my old place, space enough for a growing family. Hayes did homework at the other end of the table, grumbling about algebra. The radio played softly. Snow fell outside, gentle, this time no blizzard in sight. Hayes looked up from her textbook. Dad, do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't gotten stuck in the storm every day? Victoria set down her pencil. We wouldn't be here, wouldn't be married, wouldn't be expecting baby girl Sullivan in March. Would you have found either anyway? Hayes's question came serious, genuinely curious. Victoria and I looked at each other across the table. I like to think so. Victoria's voice held certainty. Eventually, maybe it would have taken longer. Maybe we would have wasted more years being careful and scared, but I think we would have found our way. But I'm glad we didn't have to wait, I added. Glad the universe pushed us together when we were both too stubborn to choose it ourselves. Hayes went back to her homework, satisfied with the answer. We spent the day doing nothing important, walking through snow, reading by the fire, playing cards like we had that first night. Victoria napped in the afternoon pregnancy, making her tired earlier than usual. Evening found us on the couch by the fire, Hayes asleep in the bedroom, just the 2 of us watching flames dance. Victoria's head rested on my shoulder, my hand on her rounded belly, where our daughter kicked and turned. You know what I'm grateful for? What? That blizzard. That forced me to stop running, stop hiding, stop pretending I didn't want connection just because connection meant risk. I'm grateful for you, for Hayes, for this. I gestured around the cabin, encompassing everything we'd built. This life we chose, even when choosing was terrifying. She turned to look up at me. Do you think we would have been brave enough without being forced? Maybe not. Maybe we needed nature to strip away our excuses, make it impossible to maintain distance, put us in a situation where pretending wasn't an option. Thank you, Blizzard. She whispered it like a prayer. Thank you, Blizzard, I echoed. On the mantel across from us, our wedding photo sat in a simple frame. Next to it, the ultrasound image from Victoria's 20-week appointment, our daughter in black and white, already loved beyond measure. And beside that, a drawing Hayes had made last week, stick figures labeled Dad, Victoria Hayes, and Baby all holding hands under a house that looked suspiciously like the one Victoria was designing. My family. Not the one I'd started with, or the one I'd tried to force into existence through willpower and work, but the one I'd found by finally being honest about what I wanted and brave enough to reach for it. People ask sometimes what it was like to marry a woman worth $45 million. Asked if money changed things, if wealth created distance, if I felt inadequate or kept. I told them the truth every time. I didn't marry money. I married the woman who was afraid of the cold, who held my hand in the dark when neither of us knew what morning would bring, who chose love over everything she'd built, career, reputation, safety, who showed me that the best things in life require risking everything you have for something you need. Money bought comfort. Money bought security. Money bought choices. But it couldn't buy what we had. Connection earned through vulnerability. Trust built through showing up when things got hard. Love that survived because we chose it every day, even when choosing was difficult. That was worth more than all the money in the world. Victoria's breathing evened out. She'd fallen asleep against my shoulder. I stayed still, not wanting to wake her, watching fire shadows play across her face. In 7 weeks, we'd have a daughter, a sister for Hayes, another soul to love and probably disappoint and do my best to show up for consistently. The thought terrified me. I'd already failed one daughter through neglect and wrong priorities. What if I repeated old patterns? What if I couldn't be the father 2 children needed? But then I looked at the drawing on the mantle, at Hayes's vision of family, simple and beautiful and full of hope. She believed in me. Victoria believed in me. Maybe it was time I started believing in myself. Outside, snow continued falling. The same mountains that had trapped us a year ago now sheltered us. The same isolation that had forced honesty now offered peace. Victoria murmured in her sleep, nestled closer. Her hand found mine, laced our fingers together, even unconscious. This was home, not the cabin or the apartment or the house we were building. But this Victoria warm against me, Hayes safe in the next room, a daughter growing strong inside Victoria's body. This feeling of rightness, of having finally found where I belonged. The fire burned low. I should add wood, keep the warmth going. But I didn't want to move, didn't want to disturb the perfect stillness of this moment. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Work deadlines, doctor appointments, Hayes's upcoming winter concert, James's continuing recovery, finishing the Riverside project, preparing for a newborn. But tomorrow could wait. Right now, this was enough. More than enough. This was everything. Hayes appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. Dad, you guys okay out here? We're perfect, sweetheart, just enjoying the quiet. She patted over, squeezed herself between us on the couch despite her growing size. Victoria woke enough to make room, then fell back asleep with Hayes tucked under one arm and me under the other. My whole world contained in a few feet of couch space in a cabin in the mountains. 1 year ago, I'd been trapped here by accident. Now I was here by choice, building memories in the place where everything changed, where I stopped hiding and started living, where I learned that sometimes the biggest risks lead to the greatest rewards, where I discovered that it's never too late to choose love. The fire crackled, snow fell, my family slept peacefully, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt complete. Not perfect, not without worries or doubts or fears about the future, but complete in the ways that mattered. Loved, connected, present, home.